Hi all! When you write Ruby gems or even reusable components, there is often a need for configuring your projects to behave differently in different contexts. For example, in our event store client gem, we have used to connect to external event store. We needed to pass the authorization data as well as the URL of the store where it was hosted upon. In the AWS SDK gem, you need to pass similar things to configure the initial settings. And if you use Rails, this kind of configuration may be super familiar to you. In fact, it's so common behavior where a gem or component needs to be configured somehow. It's surprising that most of the projects come with the custom configuration implementations, not always thinking about being thread safe, type safe, or even test the configuration engine properly. In today's episode of Hanami Mastery, I want to show you the dry-configurable gem, which may be an amazing improvement in this field. Dry-configurable is a simple mixing allowing you to add thread-safe configuration behavior to your classes. Initially written by Andy Holland, then basically rewritten by Nikita Shilnikov and Piotr Solnica, it's one of such micro-libraries that are close to perfection and can be injected almost everywhere. Keep in mind that because of the intense work on Hanami 2.0 and its dependencies that's happening at the moment, the interface of the dry configurable might soon change a little bit, but that's a minor thing. And you can always refer to Gem's documentation for the most up-to-date version of usage. Dry configurable is super simple to use, but because of its narrowed responsibility, at the same time it's extremely flexible to be used in different contexts. Just extend the mixin and use the setting macro to add a configuration options. You can use it either on a Ruby module, on a class, or an instance. On the module level, you need to extend the dry configurable module and you can safely use all the features it provides. Here I set the API URL to hanamimastery.com. On the class level, nothing really changes. You can use it exactly in the same way. If you want to use it on the instance of the class, however, the only difference is that you need to include the dry configurable module instead of extending it. Keep in mind that this way, you might have, for example, multiple clients connecting to an external API, each client being completely independent. It's super useful and I personally include dry configurable almost every gem or service I create, as it's so flexible in use. Now let's go through some of the features dry configurable allows you to use. I will use the class level usage from now on, but you may play with this setup however you want. First of all, you can define a basic setting, which by default is set to nil. Then, after setting the attribute to a specific value, this value is returned. You can also set the default values for your settings by passing the default value as an argument. If you would like to access the attribute directly on the class or instance the setting is defined on, set the reader option to true. Then you will be able to access that setting directly, while it will also be available via the configuration object. The next big thing is the nested settings. With dry configurable, you can add nested settings with all the features supported in every deep level. You can nest as many levels as you want, and it will all work exactly the same. You can then use those settings by chaining the methods on the config object, and yes, the chaining works exactly the same if I will set a reader option. Finally, you can easily do the pre-processing of the default and past setting values. I find it useful, for example, when I need to work with URLs. It's generally a bad practice to work with plain Ruby strings when it comes to URL definitions, so I often wrap such in an URI object. This makes sure I will never have invalid URL in my application. You can also do advanced type checking, schema definitions, and so on to be sure your app will never allow invalid configuration to be set. Dry-configurable is so simple, but at the same time so useful, it's hard to believe it's not included in all Ruby applications. It's worth of mentioning that Hanami RB 2.0 uses the dry-configurable for the framework, view, and controller settings. Give it a try in your projects and you will not regret. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and if you want to see more content in this fashion, subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow me on Twitter. As always, all links you can find in the description of the video or in the hanamimastery.com. Also, if you have any suggestions of amazing Ruby gems you would like me to cover or ideas how to improve, please mention it in the comments. I would like to thank Bogdan V for supporting this channel and all other people encouraging me to continue with this Hanami Mastery project. It really matters a lot. Any support allows me to spend more time on creating this content, promoting great open source projects, so thank you! Also check out 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for being here, you are awesome, and see you in the next Hanami Mastery episode.